Welcome to Griffonomics. I want you to picture this. A smartphone is found at a crime scene. It's locked, heavily encrypted, and, it's engineered by some of the smartest developers on the planet to be completely impenetrable.
Right, like a digital fortress.
Exactly. Yet, within a matter of minutes, law enforcement has bypassed those defenses, extracted the data, and turned it into court-admissible evidence. Today, we're looking at the business behind that capability.
Yeah, it's a massive multi-million-dollar engine.
It really is. So we've pulled together this huge stack of sources. We've got financial data from Beyond SPX, investor transcripts from the Morgan Stanley Technology and Telecom Conference, and this really dense initiation report from Aurelian Research.
Good bedtime reading.
Oh, absolutely. But our mission today is to generate a granular strategic report and an investment roadmap for Cellebrite. We're unpacking their transition from just, a single forensic extraction tool provider into this AI-driven end-to-end platform. They call it case to closure.
And it's a remarkable evolution, right? I mean, we are looking at a company that is basically digitizing the entire justice system. And the sheer economics of how they manage and process that digital transition, it's completely reshaping public safety.
So to understand those economics, we really need to look at what they actually sell today, because the case-to-closure ecosystem rests on three distinct pillars now. First, there's Insights.
Right, which handles the raw data extraction.
Yeah, physically or remotely pulling the data off the device. Then you have Guardian, which is their cloud-based evidence management system. It maintains the chain of custody, so a crucial piece of evidence doesn't just end up lost on some detective's personal flash drive.
Which happens way more than you think.
I bet. And finally, there's Pathfinder, which is their AI analytics engine. But financially, this shift to these three pillars it's huge, because Cellebrite used to just sell legacy perpetual software licenses, right?
Exactly. A police department would buy the software once, install it on a local computer, and that transaction was basically over. But today, 90% of their revenue is subscription-based.
90%. That's incredible. And the predictable revenue of a subscription model is obviously a massive draw for investors.
Right.
But the way they structure these subscriptions is what's really fascinating to me. They use this thing called a value meter consumption model.
Yeah, it's a very modern way to bill.
Right. So instead of charging a flat, unlimited use annual fee, the pricing is tethered directly to the agency's actual usage. They are billing based on the number of successful device unlocks, the total count of extractions, and the actual raw volume of data processed, which, is scaling into terabytes or petabytes now.
Oh, absolutely.
It's kind of like your home utility bill, right? Your power bill scales up with the electricity you consume. You leave the air conditioning running, you pay more. Under the value meter, if a police department processes more digital evidence, Cellebrite's revenue automatically scales up. But wait, I have a pushback question on this.
Sure, go for it.
If their revenue is tied to the sheer volume of data processed by law enforcement, doesn't that inherently mean their entire business model relies on global crime rates going up? Because that feels like a really grim investment thesis.
It totally sounds grim on the surface, but the financial mechanics actually have nothing to do with rising crime rates.
Really? How so?
It's driven by what analysts call the physics of data. Crime rates can stay completely flat or even drop, but the volume of digital evidence tied to a single crime is just exploding.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, like look back 10 years. A suspect might leave behind a few megabytes of SMS text messages and like a call log. Today, a single routine investigation involves multiple smartphones, terabytes of 4K video, smartwatch biometric data, geolocation tracking.
Encrypted chats on Signal or Telegram.
Exactly. The digital footprint of a single incident is growing exponentially. And because of those value meters, that data explosion naturally drives their annual recurring revenue, or ARR, steadily upward, completely independent of whether actual crime goes up or down.
Wow, so the data footprint of human existence is just infinitely heavier now. But if Cellebrite is monetizing that massive data explosion by the gigabyte, the detectives on the receiving end must be just drowning in a tsunami of information.
Oh, they are. You can't hand an investigator 3 terabytes of raw, unstructured smartphone data and just say, hey, go find the evidence. The volume has totally surpassed human capacity.
Which perfectly explains why they're pivoting so aggressively into AI. Because agencies desperately need a way to cut through all that noise.
Right. And that leads us directly to the March 2026 launch of Genesis.
Yeah, let's talk about Genesis. This is their new Agentic AI. And just for context, Agentic AI doesn't just mean a chatbot that answers questions. It means it's an autonomous agent that can understand an objective and actually take multi-step actions to achieve it.
Yeah, it acts as a conversational investigative partner. It's converting tasks that used to take weeks into literally minutes.
The Aurelian report had this crazy specific example. There was an Australian counterterrorism detective who got early access to Genesis. After a targeted attack, they fed the raw device data into the AI, and it instantly identified actionable evidence.
It was generating leads that would normally require like dozens of highly experienced analysts locked in a room with whiteboards for weeks.
Right, because Genesis was cross-referencing uploaded intelligence profiles and finding all these hidden connections in the data. It's operating at superhuman speed. And they're taking this even further with Guardian Investigate, right? Launching in early 2026.
Yeah, Guardian Investigate is essentially the AI nerve center. Instead of just analyzing one isolated phone, it does concurrent case management. It pulls in CCTV footage, open source intelligence from the web, phone extractions, call
It
records.
just weaves them all together.
Exactly. It automatically builds a synchronized, multi-layered timeline of events across all those different artifacts.
Okay, but this brings up a huge question. We all know the issues with AI right now. Large language models hallucinate. They invent court precedents. They make up facts. If an algorithm is building timelines and generating leads that literally put people in prison, how does that hold up in court?
That is the existential question.
Right, because a defense attorney is going to tear that methodology apart.
And that is exactly why Cellebrite can't just slap a generic off-the-shelf language model into their software. They've engineered what they call public safety-grade guardrails.
Okay, what does that actually mean, though?
It means the AI's insights are strictly grounded in the verified source evidence. It is mathematically constrained from pulling in outside information or hallucinating because its entire universe of knowledge is limited only to the data extracted from the devices in custody.
Got it.
Plus, the whole architecture is built to comply with really strict frameworks like NIST and SOC2.
Okay, so SOC2 compliance basically guarantees there is a verifiable, tamper-proof audit trail for how the data is handled.
Yes, every single correlation the AI makes is logged with forensic precision. So when a defense attorney challenges it, the prosecutor can show the exact mathematical path the AI took to reach that conclusion. It links directly back to the raw, untampered data.
So it survives cross-examination.
Exactly. It makes the whole process highly defensible.
But building AI guardrails that are mathematically bulletproof like that requires an astronomical amount of R&D. How does a software company fund that massive R&D engine without taking on just debilitating debt? Let's look at their FY 2025 financials, because this is wild.
The financial profile is truly elite. In 2025, their total revenue hit $475.7 million. That's up 19% year over year. But the metric that institutional investors are really drooling over is their free cash flow margin. It's sitting at 34%.
Yeah, and the Morgan Stanley transcript heavily emphasized their Rule of 40 performance. They scored a 50 in 2024.
Which is huge.
For anyone tracking software metrics, the Rule of 40 is the holy grail. Usually, tech companies have to choose, right? You either burn cash to grow fast, or you slow down to actually make a profit.
Right. You rarely get both.
But the Rule of 40 measures your ability to balance both. You add your revenue growth rate to your profit margin, which in this case is their adjusted EBITDA. Anything over 40 means you're growing rapidly but staying highly profitable. And Cellebrite hit 50. Plus, they have what analysts call a fortress balance sheet.
$535 million in cash and zero debt.
Zero debt. And the secret weapon driving that cash pile is this concept called negative working capital, which, sounds like a terrible accounting error.
It sounds awful, yeah. But for subscription software, it's a massive strategic advantage.
So the best way to explain negative working capital is to think of an annual gym membership. You sign up in January, and you pay the gym for the whole year up front. So the gym has your cash in their bank account immediately.
But they owe you 12 months of treadmills and towels.
Exactly. For the gym, that upfront cash is negative working capital. They have the money before they've delivered the service. They can use your cash to pay staff or upgrade equipment or open a new location. Cellebrite uses this exact mechanism with their government contracts.
Right, because law enforcement agencies prepay for these multi-year software subscriptions. This creates huge deferred revenue. And that negative working capital is what allows Cellebrite to consistently hit free cash flow conversion rates above 100%.
That's insane.
They're collecting the cash well before they incur the cost of delivering the updates over the next 3 years. So that upfront capital completely funds their growth and their AI development without them needing to borrow a single dollar.
That is just brilliant capital efficiency. But look, none of this financial maneuvering or the AI or the cloud stuff matters if you can't actually get the data off the physical phone in the first place.
You need the raw material to feed the machine.
Yeah. Which brings us to innovation, the core technical foundation of the company. The analysts call it their 3 tricks. And the first trick is arguably the hardest engineering challenge on the planet: lawful bypassing.
The physical extraction. They are locked in this permanent, incredibly expensive cat-and-mouse game against Apple and Google.
Apple's whole brand is consumer privacy. So every time iOS or Android pushes a security patch, Cellebrite's R&D team has to tear it apart, reverse engineer it, and find brand new vulnerabilities to bypass the security lawfully.
And this cycle creates a really fascinating dynamic in the industry called the dual-tool strategy.
Okay, what is that?
Well, because the cat-and-mouse game is so volatile, a forensic lab might find that, this month Cellebrite has the exploit to crack a new Samsung device. But a competitor like Magnet Axiom or Grayshift might be the only one holding the key for the absolute newest iOS update.
Oh, I see. So the lab needs both.
Exactly.
Yeah.
To guarantee access, major labs maintain active licenses for both platforms. It's industry best practice.
It's an insurance policy. A police department can't just tell a victim, hey, we have to wait 6 months for a software update to read the suspect's phone. They need multiple keys to the door. So this dual-tool strategy virtually guarantees Cellebrite a seat at the table, even if a competitor gets a temporary edge.
Right. And once they do crack the phone, the third trick, the Pathfinder AI takes over.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The reports detail this feature called cross-device mapping. Pathfinder isn't just doing dumb keyword searches on text messages. It actually decrypts criminal slang.
Yeah, using contextual language models.
So if a suspect texts, "bring the snow," the AI correlates that phrase with geolocation data near a known drop spot, translates the slang on the fly, and flags it as a narcotics transaction.
It understands the context of human communication. It translates multiple languages and maps out whole gang networks.
Which is incredible.
And from an investor's perspective, this high barrier to entry, the immense cost of constantly cracking new iOS updates and building AI that understands criminal slang, it acts as an impenetrable economic moat. A startup can't just replicate 2 decades of courtroom validation and hardware exploits overnight.
They really can. The moat is huge. But there's a limit, right? Because criminals aren't just using smartphones anymore. So Cellebrite has to expand its total addressable market, its TAM, beyond just mobile phones, which leads us to strategic M&A.
They are executing a massive TAM expansion through acquisitions. The big one is their $170 million buyout of Corellium in December 2025.
Yeah, Corellium is fascinating. They do mobile virtualization. Think of it like a highly advanced flight simulator, but for smartphones.
Right, so instead of having a physical device on a desk connected to a wire,
you spin up a fully functional, software-based virtual version of an ARM-based device entirely in the cloud. You can run simulated exploits and test vulnerabilities without ever touching a physical screen. This is massive for automakers testing connected car security, or intelligence agencies, or telecom companies.
it fundamentally shifts their customer base. They aren't just selling reactive tools to police after a crime anymore. They're opening up these massive new lanes into the private sector and defense markets for proactive security testing.
And then, just a few months later, they acquired SCG Canada,
The drone forensics company.
Yeah. Think about how many drones you see in the sky today. Every single one is a flying hard drive of potential evidence.
Oh, absolutely.
SCG's tech lets investigators pull flight logs, geolocation data, and video from over 80 different types of drones.
And the drone market is expected to exceed $53 billion by 2026. So between Corellium and SCG Canada, Cellebrite is executing a 5x expansion of its TAM. They're capturing the infrastructure for these emerging data sources before they even become the standard.
It's an aggressive playbook, but any smart investment roadmap requires looking at the risks that could derail the growth story. So let's talk about market skepticism.
The biggest near-term risk is federal budget volatility. A huge chunk of their revenue comes from public sector procurement.
Right. The reports noted that in 2025, their U.S. federal revenue growth was temporarily flat. And I want to be totally impartial here, just reporting what the analysts wrote. This was directly tied to U.S. appropriations delays and the rollout of Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, initiatives.
Yeah, when the government freezes funds to identify waste, procurement grinds to a halt. Signatures get delayed.
But it's important to note this is a timing issue, right? Not demand destruction. The agencies still need the software. The revenue just gets pushed to the next quarter.
Exactly. It creates earnings volatility, but the demand is intact. The other major risk is geopolitical premia. Cellebrite is headquartered in Israel.
Which obviously brings regional conflict risks.
Right. There are very real concerns about workforce mobilization, like if key engineers are called up for military reserve duty. The market inherently prices a risk premium into the stock because of that geography, no matter how good their financials are.
That makes sense. And then there is the ethical risk. Because Cellebrite makes tools that fundamentally dismantle digital privacy. To manage that, they have an ethics and integrity committee that actively bans sales to countries with human rights concerns. They've pulled out of massive markets like China and Russia.
To protect the brand from ESG-driven divestment, yeah.
But wait, if they're intentionally locking themselves out of huge global markets for ethical reasons, doesn't that inherently limit their growth ceiling? They are walking away from hundreds of millions in revenue.
It seems counterintuitive if you just look at the raw numbers. But maintaining strict ethical boundaries is exactly what allows them to maintain institutional trust with Western agencies.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, if a Cellebrite tool is definitively linked to, say, the suppression of journalists in an authoritarian regime, it becomes politically toxic. A U.S. police department can't procure a tool with that kind of reputational baggage. So the Ethics Committee actually secures and protects their most lucrative federal contracts.
So the trust is as much a product as the software. So bring it all together. What is the final verdict? Weighing these risks against the massive data tailwinds.
Aurelian Research gave them a definitive BUY rating, classified as a high-conviction growth opportunity.
And the main catalyst for that.
The ongoing migration of their installed base to the new INSEADS platform. Right now, only about 47 to 55% of customers have migrated. As the rest move over to these higher-tier subscriptions, it acts as a direct, near-term catalyst for ARR growth.
We have really tracked a staggering evolution today. We've gone from a company that basically made physical cables to break into flip phones into an AI powerhouse managing the entire life cycle of global justice.
Yeah, when you combine their fortress balance sheet, the physics of data pushing their value meters, and the force multiplier of Agentic AI, Cellebrite has built an incredibly resilient business model.
It really is an impenetrable moat when you map it out. And it leaves you with a pretty wild thought to mull over. If every piece of technology we interact with, our phones, our cars, the drones above us, is constantly recording data, and an AI like Genesis can analyze all of it in minutes, does the concept of a cold case even exist in the future? Or are they all just active cases, sitting in a cloud repository waiting for the right algorithm to process the data?
That's a fascinating way to look at it.
Risk defined, portfolio protected.